Hello and welcome to this short presentation. And thank you very much for taking the time to view this presentation. My name is Seamus Allison and I represent a small research team based primarily at the business school in Nottingham, which is part of Nottingham Trent University, but we also have members from other local institutes institutions that have been playing an active role in our team. To give a little bit of background to our research, the research team has been working with Nottingham City Council over the last few years to work with them to evaluate a number of initiatives designed to encourage cycling in the city. And in particular, management at NCC want to get a better understanding of the perception of users of infrastructure, and particularly some new infrastructure, and their motives for cycling, and indeed that will also at some point include those who don't cycle. For further background into the city of Nottingham, NCC has one of the highest cycling spends per head of population amongst unitary authorities in the UK. But having said that, cycling's mode share remains really quite low at about 4.5%. But the city has got big ambitions here, and the city aims to be carbon neutral by 2028, and cycling is seen as an important way to achieve that. Bit of background on the research itself. The City Council employed a multi-item on-street questionnaire. Now that questionnaire comprised a large number of standard questions that NCC has used for previous surveys, but also featured a number of questions designed with the research team at the business school. And data was collected primarily along the Western Corridor, which is the new piece of cycling infrastructure that we're particularly interested in here, but also by other means such as online and cycling hubs and shops and so on across the city. There were three pieces of analysis that the business school team was asked to perform by management at NCC. The first was to identify user segments most likely to start cycling as a result of the new infrastructure. Also, we were asked to conduct some quantitative analysis to get a clearer understanding of the motives behind cycling, or people new to cycling, ideally, and also the management at NCC asked us to analyse the verbatim written comments from respondents, and it's this third item that this presentation is focused on. The methods we used then, once we'd got these verbatim comments, we identified themes and sub-themes from the open-ended sections of the questionnaires. Around 311 people made comments, and they made multiple comments, so there were many hundreds of comments that we had to draw from, and we identified three key themes that we feel are important for cycling infrastructure in the city. But before we look at those, let's just consider some of the strengths and limitations of the research and the data we had. In total, 581 people responded. Of that, 311 wrote at least one qualitative comment, representing many hundreds of qualitative comments. So we feel that there's a reasonable amount of data to work with in order to identify the themes. Numbers of the respondents across the questions were not always 100%. So 311 made verbatim responses, written responses of the 581. So potentially there are many hundreds of what could have been interesting and useful comments that are not available to us. The questionnaire and many of the questions were not designed specifically for the type of analysis that we did. We kind of piggybacked on that questionnaire that the NCC management were already planning to deploy. And also the nature of the analysis for this particular type of analysis is highly subjective. possibly other people looking at those hundreds of verbatim comments could well have identified different themes. So the three themes we identified are as follows: themes relating to communities, and that included cycling communities, so identifying as a cyclist, but also part of a wider community, and how NCC management responds to that wider community. There were comments around infrastructure, largely positive regarding investment and the purpose behind the infrastructure, but also many concerns around the design of infrastructure and the maintenance and so on. And the third theme that we identified was behavioural themes, largely but not entirely regarding drivers' attitudes and resultant safety from that, and perhaps a need to educate road users. Under the communities theme, many of the people who made the verbatim comments identified as being part of a cycling community, and they were really quite positive that their views were taken into account by NCC. So we under this theme, we got a mix of very positive comments. However, there were groups of people who felt that there wasn't enough consultation. I guess it's one of those issues where damned if you do, damned if you don't. Certainly consultation did happen, and it's quite possible that the people who commented negatively here were not aware of that consultation, and therefore weren't able to take part. So that might be something that the City Council should take into account in the future. A lot of comments were made regarding infrastructure, which is clearly a key point here. And the main themes regarding infrastructure were as follows. People were calling for more cycle lanes, and particularly they wanted them segregated and to have flow. They wanted to prioritize the cycling flow over traffic flow and to reduce barriers in that regard. Also, there were a number of interesting comments made regarding not the infrastructure itself, but supporting infrastructure such as parking, storage and maintenance and so on. And also, cyclists in this survey called for more awareness campaigns. There were also comments made that we classed as behaviour, and some of them, as you can see here, focused on the behaviour of other road users, such as drivers, pedestrians, and people using the cycle corridor in ways that it wasn't designed to be used, walking in it, parking in it, and so on. And participants to the survey, many of them felt that this was a weakness in the infrastructure or at least NCC's approach to it. However, having said that, there was generally broad support for this new piece of infrastructure. People said that the cycling experience was better, it was safer. Almost 200 people had started to cycle more or had started to cycle maybe first time for several years since the infrastructure was opened. So there was a lot of positive feeling that that cross-city journey was now quicker, safer, more convenient, easier, and considerably more pleasant than the options had been prior to that. So to think of some conclusions then, draw these together. The analysis that we've just gone through in this presentation, or just gone through in the presentation, has already been shared with senior management at Nottingham City Council and with the Greater Nottingham City Development Group, which is a range of stakeholders with an interest in cycling and cycling infrastructure in the city. This type of analysis is relatively new to NCC. They're very experienced at conducting surveys and so on, but tend to limit their analysis to descriptive stats of the data they get. And it was generally felt that the level of insight provided by the verbatim comments, of which we've got many, many more than I presented today, was very useful for management. And we will, in further evaluation, we've been asked to apply this technique further. Also, it's planned to share this analysis and other analysis that we've done with other local authorities via practitioner conferences, publications, and meetings with other authorities, along with Nottingham City Council. And indeed, that has already happened. We've met up with local authorities that border the city. Okay, so that concludes this short presentation. Again, thank you very much for taking the time to listen. Hopefully there's been some points of interest to you there, and if any of you feel you want to get in touch with me, very, very happy for you to do so. Thank you again.